to discuss the very important topic of gang and youth gun violence. First, I want to thank our team here for hosting, our coordinating this at Everett Police Department, and also certainly Explore for hosting us here. Today is International Gang Awareness Day, and to me it's really important, especially on this day, that we continue to come together and talk about the work that we're doing in this community to keep children and families safe, because any life lost to gang or gun violence is one life too many. Before I share a few things, I want to just first thank our police department and this community. Boys and Girls Club, the entire community here in South Everett, and Everett Police Department have worked very hard in the last 20 months since I've been in office to increase safety and reduce gang and gun violence, and the work that they're doing is paying off, and we're seeing some success, and I really appreciate that. In January 2018, when I first took office, it was coming after many events in 2017 where we saw an incredible increase in gun violence and gang-related issues and the loss of life, and it was very tragic. And that led to the first mayoral directive that I issued, aimed at reducing youth gun violence and reducing gang activity here in our city. The key initiative was based in intervention and prevention. So we formed a work group of city staff and community stakeholders, and the group determined top priority areas, identifying at-risk youth and quickly connecting them to services. And as a former service provider, I know that is actually what works, is to get kids before they're involved, get them when they're at risk. And so out of that emerged two programs: the Positive Intervention Outreach Team for Youth, Pivot, and Pathways for Adolescent Youth. And I'm sure our team will update you on some of the successes we're seeing there. The directive also established our first Everett Police Gang Response Unit. This standalone unit has been up and running for over a year under the leadership of Anthony Fletcher. And Anthony's been with the department for 10 years, is that correct? We're so fortunate to have Anthony in this role. Not only is he warm and approachable and well connected to this community as a former school resource officer, but he's also passionate, dedicated, and committed to this work, and very grateful for you and the full team's work on this. You'll hear more about the initiatives this evening and the powerful impact they're having on our community, as well as hopefully some data on how we're doing that I'm sure the chief and others will share. But just to close, I want to thank you, because the community is really vital in this. I was just sharing with our King 5, who's here tonight, how important the community is, because Everett Police Department certainly can't do this alone, the city cannot do this alone, schools cannot do this alone, and community organizations and families can't do it alone. It really takes all of us, and it's critical that we have an empowered and informed community to help identify risk factors and support the entire youth and families in our broad city. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Chief Templeman. It's of course his leadership that has been driving this important work, not only on this issue, but on so many public safety issues in the city. So again, I'm very grateful to have his leadership and dedication, and we're very fortunate to have your commitment to this issue. So thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. Okay, so I too would just like to welcome everybody here. It's great to see so many community members here to talk about what is really for me in public safety, I think probably one of the top priorities that we have, right? Which is protecting our youth and creating a community that's safe for them to grow up in, and that's free from being involved in gang violence and gang activity. And so I think that from the police department perspective, we see firsthand some of the devastating effects that gang involvement can have on a youth, and we've seen it in our community. And I just want to talk a little bit about some of the data that we've seen. And the one thing I want to say about the data before I get into it is that it changes. And so I know that the media is here. There are some representatives from the media here today, and so I'm always cautious about sharing data when the media is here, because they take that information, they say, you know, if it changes in a week, they want to know why it's changed and was it inaccurate at the time. So I'm going to share this information with a little bit of a disclaimer that this is live data. This is information that does change. And so But I think it's important to share a little bit of the data because I don't know of a community and of a department around our region that has dedicated more resources and more time to addressing this real important issue. And as the mayor indicated when she was speaking, when she came into office, we were coming right off the heels of 2017, which was a year that we saw significant increases in shootings citywide, in gang-related crimes in the city, in drive-by shootings, in stolen firearms. Everything was up significantly. And so this is what Mayor Franklin came into in January, and I appreciate her leadership in identifying this as a top priority for our police department and for the city, and then supporting us as we have gone down this road with the community over the last year and a half, and definitely seen some pretty impressive results. So I'll just share to start that in 2018, at the end of 2018, so we kicked off this initiative in January of 2018. At the end of the year, we look back at certain data points as it relates to gang-related offenses, drive-by shootings in the city, stolen firearms, and we saw significant decreases in every one of those categories. And some of these numbers are very, very impressive. Shootings citywide, we saw a 35% reduction in 2018 compared to 2017. Drive-by shootings, which are not always gang-related, but quite often can be, we saw a 67% decrease in 2018 in our drive-by shootings in the city of Everett. Gang-related offenses, so we track crimes or reports that our officers respond to that have a gang nexus of some sort. Most of them are graffiti, but we did see a 44% reduction in gang-related offenses at the end of 2018 when you look back and compare it to 2017. Stolen firearms, which is another focal point for us in public safety and for the mayor, especially when they get into the hands of juveniles and kids. It's very, very concerning to us. We saw a 27% decrease in those numbers. And so the results were outstanding, and as we got to the end of the year, I thought, how are we going to sustain these kind of reductions going into 2019? We stood up our gang unit, as a gang response unit, as the mayor indicated, in 2018. Towards the end of 2018, we brought in, obviously, Officer Fletcher as our gang intervention prevention officer also, and he's been very active in the community with Andre from the Boys and Girls Club. I will tell you, and this is where I want to be very careful, if we project out to the end of this year with the data that we're looking at right now for this year, and again, this is subject to change, but we're projecting a 28% decrease in shootings citywide on top of the decrease that we saw in 2018 for 2019. We're projecting a 38% decrease in drive-by shootings if the trend continues for the rest of the year, as we've seen for the first 8 months of the year, and a 49% decrease in gang-related offenses. That's on top of the 44% decrease that we saw in 2018. So, and even stolen firearms, we're projecting to see a 40% decrease in stolen firearms. So a lot of work has gone on to this, and I'm not going to say that these reductions are all a result of just the work that we've done as a police department and as a community. Some of that is just, crime trends tend to go up and down over time, but I can't help but think that the work that we're doing and the work that we're doing with the community is definitely impacting some of these numbers. And before I do turn it over, I just want to talk a little bit about not just the data, because I am a data person, I'm a numbers person. I love to look at numbers, and I use those to really make decisions for our agency and where we deploy our resources. But I also think it's important to really get a good feel for some of the work that has gone into this. And so the mayor talked a little bit about it. It's all of our work is focused on prevention and intervention. That is the cornerstone, right? It's looking upstream, and the mayor's commitment to a full-time gang prevention intervention officer. We never, we've had one in the past. It was a grant-funded position. This is not a grant-funded position. This is a commitment that the mayor has made and that we've made as a department to addressing the upstream issues, right? So that we don't have to be responding to drive-by shootings and gang-related offenses. And so that's really important. Standing up the gang enforcement piece as well. So we've got a gang response unit that focuses on violent offenders and individuals in our community that are putting all of us and our youth at risk. And so they're there for a balanced approach, because it can't just be outreach and it can't just be enforcement. It's got to be a combination of both. And so we're committed to that. The other things that I just want to mention before I do turn it over have to do with some of the legislation that we've worked on over the last year. That it doesn't get a lot of press and not a lot of people know about it, but I think it's important because it sends a signal to our community and to our department and to our youth that this is a priority for us. And so over the last year, last summer, with the leadership of Mayor Franklin and City Council, we passed an ordinance that requires that owners of firearms report their firearms. If they're lost or stolen, they have to report those to the police within 24 hours. We were running into situations where we were encountering firearms that were stolen and we didn't know they were stolen when we were running them, and there was this period of time, there was a gap that we were seeing at different times, not all the time, but at different times where a firearm would be stolen or lost and the owner would wait. Maybe I'll find it, maybe it'll turn up, or it's just not a priority to report it stolen right now. And so we've now required that by law in the city of Everett, that you will do that. We've also enhanced our aiming and discharging a firearm ordinance that prohibits any discharge of a firearm in the city of Everett, and it increased the penalty from a misdemeanor to a gross misdemeanor if you aim a firearm at another. And so I think the approach that we've taken is a balanced approach. It is a well-rounded approach. It doesn't focus just on arresting people and putting them in jail. That's not the answer, and I think we all know that in this room. But it's a balanced approach that looks at prevention, intervention, it looks at enforcement, it looks at firearm safety. Our Lock It Everett campaign, where we've now given out, I think the last number I heard today was 533 gun locks to the community for free as part of that. And we have the Lock It Everett campaign that really encourages responsible firearm ownership and securing firearms and doing what you can to prevent those from being stolen or getting into the hands of the wrong people. So again, I want to thank all of you for being here tonight. I want to thank the mayor for her support on this whole initiative from the get-go. A lot of work has been done in the last 18 months, and we're seeing results, positive results in our community. The goal now is, let's not let up on the gas. Let's keep pushing forward, and let's keep reducing those numbers and really getting into the community and making a difference. And so with that, I would like to introduce Ricardo. And Ricardo, you're a program director. What's your title?
Director of Youth Outreach for the Mukilteo YMCA.
Director, he's got it. What he said. And Ricardo has been an individual that I met as a result of the work that we're doing. He was part of is part of the Gang Response Community Advisory Group that was convened as part of this whole initiative. And so I would like to introduce him up to say a few words and speak a little bit about his experience. He's been a wonderful asset for us and a great partner, and somebody that I've actually learned a great deal from in just the short amount of time that I've known and worked with him. So Ricardo,
Thank you.
come on up. All right, thank you.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you for all coming here and being a part of this. For me, it really hits close to home when a lot of the kids who are in these situations with gangs, either as a victim or as a participant, they identify with me in regards to being a person of color, a Latino in Everett. As we all know, a lot of people just kind of tend to feel that, oh, that kid's a troublemaker, he probably lives on Casino Road. There's that stigma that Casino Road is a bad place to be in. And for me, it's important. I was once a victim of gang activity. I've been stabbed 3 times trying to break up a fight. It's not a beautiful experience when you have your mom crying next to your bed. And for me, it wasn't a life-threatening situation, but it could have been. And I can't understand the pain that some parents who go through these situations where they lose a kid, they lose a loved one over gang violence. And a lot of it just stems from male toxicity, where it is these kids growing up without an adult figure in their life, without a father figure in their life, without an adult role model. And I take that as my responsibility. I try to connect with all these kids the best way I can. I try to bring kids together, even kids who would never be in the same room at the same time. Just bring them together and let them all know, hey, we all have that one sweet, loving mom at home. We all have that same Mexican-American values, those Chicano values. And there's no reason to be doing this violence. It's just hurting ourselves. And as I would like to thank the YMCA for giving me this opportunity to literally make my position be what I want it to be. And for myself, it's just helping these kids who are seen as a burden to society, but they're not. They're the future of our society. And a lot of these kids are just geniuses, just dying meaninglessly for no reason, you know, to try and protect their own, to try and protect their neighborhood from violence that they're just creating among themselves. It's kind of pointless, and I try to connect with the kids and just really be that person for them, that adult figure that some of these kids just don't have. And I'd like to thank Dan Templeman for really giving us this platform, and the Mayor Franklin, for just being very supportive. I feel like these issues have been going on for years. It just stems up, dies down, stems up, dies down, and after the death of David Sandoval in 2017, I feel like big steps were taken, and I can see the difference that it's created in the community. And thank you.
So if I could for just a second, I'm going to interject and make a connection. So I work now with Ricardo Herrera and look to work with him very much in the future. But the commitment that the police department and the city of Everett has been way before 2017, 2018. You look here, this is Ricardo Herrera and our very first junior police academy back in 2008, right? So the commitment from the city of Everett has been that way, right? We've always been committed to supporting our youth and giving them those skills. And he's very modest. He won't tell you a lot of things, but through this and through connections that he was able to make, right? He was able to go to ECC, right? Overcome some more obstacles, went to UW Bothell, now has a bachelor's in business and is a true community leader. But myself, right, just finding this out just a couple weeks ago, I wanted to make sure that people understand that City of Everett and the police department, we have been trying to make this connection for years. It's not just been recent, but this and Ricardo being here now lets us know that the efforts that we put in 10 years from now, the sky's the limit. Okay? Thank you. Sorry.
Thank you.
Didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, nice. It feels nice seeing my hair again, you know.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Andre Graham. I'm the director for the South Everett Mukilteo Boys and Girls Club on Casino Road. Over the past year, 10 months or so, I've been working directly with Officer Fletcher, and it's been a pleasure partnering with him and the Everett PD and lifting up and starting the Pay and Pivot program. So tonight, I'm going to talk a little bit about successes we've had and struggles with our programs. So with the PAY program, a quick reminder what that is. PAY stands for Pathways for Adolescent Youth. That particular program, we've had 4 youth involved in that particular program. We've had 1 youth successfully age out of the program and is currently being supported as a freshman in high school. Another youth has aged out of the program and has transferred to our Pivot program, which I'll talk about that program shortly after this. Another youth, we have 2 youth that are still in the program and they're in middle school. Some of the struggles we've had with the PAY program are finding, positive adult mentors to work with each youth. Right now I'd like to use this opportunity to, say that, anyone interested in mentoring a youth, please contact us, contact Officer Fletcher. We would love to have you on board. Another struggle with the PAY program that we've seen is actual, it's unfortunate, but parent involvement and acknowledgement, unfortunately, of their youth being at risk, right? So, our goal is to prevent, intervene before something happens. And I think sometimes we see the phone calls after something has happened. So our goal and our priority is to help prevent it. And so getting maybe the parents buy-in sooner or something like that would help us significantly as far as that goes. Regarding the Pivot program, which we started back in November 2018 as well, we've had 6 youth involved and enrolled in that program. And I will say the Pivot program is not necessarily a program, it's a team. It stands for a Positive Intervention Outreach Team. And this is basically a team of individuals from specific organizations that partner together to wrap services around our youth. So in the Pivot team, we've had 6 youth involved. We've seen 4 of the youth having reduced criminal justice contacts. So that's a great thing for us, right? Less negative contacts with law enforcement. We've had 1 youth successfully enrolled in an inpatient drug treatment. 5 youth have returned back to school. I think this is huge, being actively participating in their education. That's huge. And we've had 1 youth attend an Everett Sea Mentor Sailing event, which was a great opportunity that we had that came up. So struggles with the Pivot program, I think, not a lot, but organizing meetings with multiple agencies that we work with, we found that, a lot of time juggling schedules and things of that nature, missed meetings or things of that nature. So moving forward, our goal is basically to try to meet on school campuses with that core group of service providers. And I think that'll better help us to serve them and meet regularly and consistently. And I think it'll just be something that's more practical and efficient for everyone involved. So I'm looking forward to that coming up very soon. I'm sure we'll be having a meeting. I think that is a quick summary. I'm sure we can go back over some things if there's questions later, but I think that's a good summary of the 2 programs. But it's been a pleasure working with the Everett Police Department and the community partners. I'm excited and looking forward to this school year and partnering and making additional partners and getting to know additional organizations and that are interested in helping serve our youth.
So I've been introduced already, but I'll do it again. My name's Officer Anthony Fletcher. I go by Tony. I go by Fletcher. Much like Ricardo, I started out and had to find my own pathways away from gangs. I grew up in LA, went to Venice High School, grew up like a lot of kids that we see now in 6th grade. I lived in a hotel down the street, had to deal with that. In between the time I was born to the time I was in 6th grade, I lived in 3 different states, 8 different cities, and went to 13 different elementaries before I was in 6th grade. Right? So I know how that picking up and moving and that unstable can affect you, right? I tell the kids that I work with now in middle school, most of them have not done anything that they can't overcome. Between 7th and 8th grade, I told off so many teachers. I was in school suspension, detention, or actually kicked out of school 53 times in those 2 years. What saved me was football, right? So what we're trying to do here is find Ricardo's, Andre's, Officer Fletcher's, people that I don't even know in the audience right now that can make a connection and find out what's going to get that kid out of bed and what's going to be their hook. For me, it was football. So I appreciate all you coming. I'm going to do very brief of what we're seeing in the area, some indicators. If you need further information, we'll have some questions or we'll have my information. But we have to first deal with what is a gang, right? And this is our legal definition, just kind of, I won't say dumbed down, just simplified, right? Anytime we have 3 or more persons identifying with the same leadership, name, symbols, or signs, and they begin criminal activity, right? It is not against the law to be a part of the gang, right? I hate to have to tell people that, but what makes it against the law is this criminal activity, right? That's by definition. If I go to Cascade High School and go to their basketball team, they meet those first 2, right? They don't become a criminal street gang until they start doing criminal activity, right? So what do we see in Snohomish County, right? We've got Black Gangster Disciples or Gangster Disciples, which are a folk nation, right? They didn't originally come to Everett. Everett was a lumber city. It's originated in Chicago in 1960s, right? With the ease of transportation, the ease of information, mimicking on Instagram, Snapchat, we get hybrid gangs or national gangs that weren't originally here that come into our communities, right? Crips, originally associated in LA in the 1960s, These groups formed because they believed that they had some kind of oppression, right? At that time, whether it was racism or what that community believed was police brutality, whatever formed them to come together, they began a group, right? I tell everybody that I talk to about gangs, it is way easier for you to victimize your own. So if you're in a community and a group gets together and they want to victimize somebody, they're going to victimize their own community first. So as a result, you have other rivals that come up, right? Their main rivals are Bloods. Then, like I said, you have a group that's taking over a community, and then you have people that want to stand up. They may not want to stand up in the right way, but they believe they have to protect themselves. So you get a rival group, right? So that's where the Bloods come from. Norteños, again, Norteños and Sureños actually started in the jail system in California. And originally, it was a line in California from Bakersfield, right? It was just seen that if you're in a jail north of Bakersfield, you were seen as a Norteño. If you're in a jail south of Bakersfield, you were seen as a Sureño, right? That is no longer the case now. Mostly that we have in our area are Sureños. And people ask me, well, Officer Fletcher, how is that possible? We can't get any more north. We're in the Pacific Northwest. It is a lifestyle, right? We're closer to Seattle. Seattle's a bigger city, and it's more like LA, right, than it is Modesto, right? It's now a kind of lifestyle, the culture, right? The Norteños that we see in our area may come from Yakima or Wenatchee, and they'll settle in like Monroe or Sultan, Granite Falls, but it's a culture now. It does no longer a line in the sand in California. So Sureños excuse me, all means are the most that we see in our area just because we're closer to that big city life, right? Their true rivals are Norteños. In this area, we even have Sureños that are fighting with Sureños. And for me, that's, I hate to say it, that is a sign that we're doing what we should be doing because we are not allowing the gang leadership to take hold of our community, right? Once we have gang leadership, true gang leadership in our community, you will start to see Sureños stop fighting each other, right? I would like to see no fighting, right? But it tells me that we're doing something right if these small hybrid groups are still at least feuding with each other because they don't have organized gang leadership, which we never want to happen. Mara Salvatrucha 13 actually is a gang by definition. It stands for Beware of the Salvadorian Gang. Most people don't understand that that gang didn't start in El Salvador. It started in Los Angeles. Because in 1980, the civil war that was going on in El Salvador, refugees were coming here by the hundreds of thousands. They were already establishing, or they're starting to live and establish themselves in already Hispanic neighborhoods. And again, you go back to that mentality that it's easier to victimize within your own community. You have younger groups that start picking on people that are different than them. So you have El Salvadorians that get together and just don't want to be hurt or want to go to school, not beat up. So they started out as the Mala Salvatrucha Stoners. That group came from a civil war. So when they retaliated, they were a lot more violent than LA had seen. So that's when we started getting a lot of exporting of gangs from the LA area in the 1990s when homicides hit their peak, right? Asian gangs that we have in the area, I try and explain that the Asian gangs that we see here in the Pacific Northwest are not like you see on TV, right? We don't have the Yakuza or things like that. They may be there, but it's not the Asian gangs that we see. We'll see tiny rascal gangs, which started in Long Beach, California, which means that's where they were formed, so they will look more like a historic black gang. They will look more like Crips, right? They will talk more and dress more like that than they would a traditional Hollywood Asian gang. This is when we start to have that crossover, right? So, Insane Clown Posse, they are cyclical, right? But when you have a popular group and then they have an image right? And people start to band together, use that image, and then go out and do criminal activity, then that, by definition, that becomes a gang. I'm not saying everybody that listens to this group is a criminal street gang member, but by definition, they could be if they're using that symbol, using these terms in association with that to go out and do criminal street gang activity. Brief history of how we got here in Snohomish County, right? The gangs that we have. Like I said, in the mid-90s, after the war between 18th Street and Mario Salvatrucha, Mexican Mafia comes in and says, hey, you guys are stopping our taxes. You're both going to be paying taxes to us. You're going to split this side of the city. And the killing stopped for a little bit. But now we're talking about criminal activity with narcotics, right? It still comes up again. And Southern California and the federal government have to find a way to deal with this increased violence. So they start deporting people. And that's how Mario Salvatrucha got to 3 different countries. But people also start moving to try and get away, right? Families don't want to see their youngsters being killed. So they move to Seattle, or they move to family where they're in Oklahoma City, right? So that's when we start seeing the exporting of gangs, right? Because if people don't stop doing what they're doing, they still just start that new community in a different area. Late 90s, we start to see the Asian gangs pop up just because street racing, things like that, but it was cool to do, right? Our biggest influence of Asian gangs in the area come from SeaTac and Tequila area, our TRG, but originally started in Long Beach. And in 2000s, we start to see the overall narcotics being controlled, right? Our community just happens to be right along I-5, right? From Canada all the way down to Mexico. So at some point, once criminals get smarter, they start putting people in certain places and they start exporting again strategically where their gangs are, right? We're closer to a bigger city like Seattle, and then families wanting to get away from that go as far as they possibly can where the next job is, right? But if people don't stop what they're doing or intervene with the youth, then that just grows a different hybrid gang. Mario Salvatrucha, same thing, we went through that.